Welcome to another episode of the Golden Moment podcast. My name's Mijo Biscan. In this episode, I had a really great conversation with Richard Moffat. I got to know Richard as he was a booking agent for a number of really great music venues in Melbourne, some of my favourite music venues, the Northcote Social Club and the Hotel. But he books for many other festivals and all sorts of things. He also had a very long-running radio show on Triple R in Melbourne, and he just has his finger on the pulse of music and has for a long time. So that was the initial impetus, really, this podcast being kind of about music and the music industry and creativity. But there's also another dimension to this podcast, which is kind of personal development, personal transcendence, how to live a better life, essentially, whatever word we want to kind of use for that. And funnily enough, we went to that place very quickly. So Richard has obviously been on a kind of journey of experiencing yoga and qigong, and we talked a lot about breath and breathing slowly. But there was also a lot of talk about music, and so there's value in here for musicians and really for anyone. There's some really great advice and just great conversation. So thanks to Richard for that conversation, and here it is in all its glory. I bring you Mr. Richard Moffat.
Over the last course of years, the media has had way less power than it used to have. You know, a lot of the gatekeepers of the music business were all the, radio programmers and the various people that had to anoint you, even, print media, whatever. And over the last 5-10 years, all of those gatekeepers have gradually diminished in their power to control the narrative of what people like. So, I love the fact that you can go on the internet now and you can see all these things that people like that have never had anybody anoint them or give them attention or even fund them necessarily, So there's all these really interesting stories of things that exist outside of the traditional industry framework that still get traction and build an audience. And, they're not all necessarily good, but they share that common denominator of having made somebody be interested in them. So they've had an interesting story or something that's kind of made people want to share the content and help it build organically. And, a lot of people feel disempowered by that. They feel like the system's broken or something is not working in the way that it used to. But to me, I really believe it's an opportunity. So, and the opportunity is in how well people can make content and, how honed their story is, how interesting their story is and how happy they are to share that story in an online world. So the artists that are finding it most awkward tend to be the ones that either don't want to share things that they feel or they haven't really found a framework of how to tell thear story. Those are the ones that are struggling in the modern world. But as soon as you cross over the awkwardness of engaging with and making your own content, and the key thing with content is putting it where the people are, not dictating to people where they find you, but going and meeting people halfway.
Yeah, the model of how music is getting out into the world has almost done a complete 180 of rather than in lots of ways, in the anointing thing that you're talking about, like being chosen, like an A&R rep shows up somewhere. I mean, this is probably even further old school. They anoint a band and they say, go make this record and we're going to plaster it everywhere and make people buy it. To now kind of flipping that where the music is created and then people can find their way to it. Or like you're saying, you can place it in the right locations and people can engage. And the point you made about story seems to be like a really crucial part of this. I was reading someone, I think it was a Spotify playlist curator was talking about, they just get so many submissions every day. And I'm sure you experience this as a radio presenter as well. As there's all these submissions coming at you, and at the end of the day, he has to pick a limited number of those things, and very often it's all excellent, and it's just the story that just distinguishes between like, oh, I resonate. I know a bit more about this band, and I resonate with that story, and so
yeah. One of the things I love about the modern world is that a lot of the stars of the modern world are the least likely looking people, like Lizzo or Tones and I, or if anybody was out there looking for the like hot young, fashion model, then they're not going to come across Lizzo and Tones and I, right? Like, so that sense of, you have to look a certain way or you have to fit a certain aesthetic, like that's all gone. Like, and most of the people that get big now, there's no precedent for them. To me, I don't think there's a precedent for Post Malone or, Lizzo, any of these people. Like most of the people that are doing the best at the moment, they don't fit. They're not even in a genre half the time. They're making up new genres. I don't even know what to call them anymore. Is Post Malone a hip hop act? He's got face tattoos. He's a big guy. Like he kind of came from the hip hop world, except maybe not. And then he writes these pop songs. Is Lizzo a hip hop act or a pop act or a dance act, or it's so there's a lot of that stuff coming out now where it is about the story, the story of kind of what the act represents that makes people connect with them. And they all feel to me like they're outliers, and even the acts sometimes when they become so massive commercially, they still seem like an outlier. They don't seem like they're part of the mainstream anymore.
Yeah.
You've got even people like Beyonce, like the last few albums that she made, like, she's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest pop artist in the world. Yeah. She's put out these albums like Lemonade or whatever that have no hit singles, nothing even approaching a singable chorus or traditional pop single, and yet people still perceive her as a pop artist. They don't think that she's gone experimental or avant-garde. They still know she's Beyonce. Yeah. But she can make these very successful records that don't have any commercially sellable aspect to them. I kind of love that about the modern world.
Yeah. And I suppose in her case, she's built such a strong story in the past, whether it's through the previous model or whatever, but there's this strong association with her. I mean, she's just idolized in so many music circles, which I find really interesting. She's a powerful crossover type of artist where anyone who's almost hardcore in anything would be like, yeah, Beyonce, she's amazing.
Yeah, she crosses over all those boundaries, And it's very easy to say that she comes from the old world, where everyone was discovered. Like that, to me, there's so many new artists that are breaking through now that, that they get the following online first, and then the whole machine comes later. The machine doesn't come first; it doesn't create it.
Yeah. So that's something I think really interesting to talk about, that dynamic that. I guess the music industry or artists, there's, this concept of, the early adopters and all of that stuff, and then coming into more mainstream awareness or whatever, that the focus of used to be, I want to get this everywhere. I want every human being to hear this. Whereas the tools that we have now allow us to be heard by just the people that care. You can go really direct. So that's been a huge shift of what I've been thinking about with, releasing music is I don't really need everyone to hear it. And I'm not necessarily interested in everyone hearing it.
Nobody does anymore.
Yeah, that's right. And so I'm really focusing on just getting it directly to people who are likely to care and be into it. And then, like you're saying, kind of develop that story or that relationship directly with those people, creating a community around that. And then if it expands out into different areas or, different parts of the music listening population or whatever, then I suppose that's the bonus. But
Yeah, my favorite of the recent artists that really built organically is Billie Eilish. She just kept putting out songs, just song after song, one, 2 in August, 1 in September, 1 in October. There was no sense of this is from the album that's going to come out, or this is why this song is coming out. She would just put a song online. Some had videos, some didn't. Sometimes the video would come 3 months after the song. So all of those old plans just all got thrown out the window. She basically just started sharing the art as soon as she had made it. And she did eventually put out an album, but at the point that she put out that album, her story was so big that it was a given it would debut at #1 everywhere, even though at the time it didn't have like a hit single on it, So yeah, all the radio and all that stuff, it all comes after now. And it's a given that all the acts that are successful these days, it's already a given they're going to be successful before radio happens. And that's why you get these artists like, Lizzo is 3 albums in, and she was, I can't remember if she won or was nominated. Maybe she won the Grammy for Best New Artist. And she's put out 3 albums. The first one came out 8 years ago. So what's the definition of a new artist when you've been around for eight years,
Yeah.
And, there's the #1 artist in America this week is Doja Cat. And she's the same. Like, she's been playing for years and years. She had a song out in 2014. Even when she toured Australia last year, she was, a secondary act on a smaller stage. And now she's one of the biggest artists in the world. 45 million monthly listeners on Spotify, #1 in America. And again, like, her story is not like the classic arc. She had weird sort of Instagram beeps, and like people were having a go at her and thought she wasn't a credible artist a year or 2 ago, and she's just put out so much good material over a long time that everything has followed, and everyone is doing her dance, not the other way around.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's pretty powerful. So, I mean, you've got your finger very much on the pulse of this, and you've seen how this transition has been happening. If there are a few things you think artists should focus on the most, what do you think those core things are? 1, 2, 3 sort of things. Like, just focus on those.
At the moment, the #1 thing to do, beyond, I always say the most important thing is write a great song, always and forever will be, no matter what. All this technology stuff is all secondary, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can dabble all you like in making exotic sounds or hiring producers or whatever. But ultimately, the thing people always respond to is a great song. And, that's why, that Dance Monkey song, the Tones and I song, is the highest streamed female artist song of all time. And it only came out last year, 8 billion plays, I think. Yeah, so that's, that's just a testament to the fact that that is a great song. And when I first heard that song, I went, okay, I remember that hook, and, it stayed with me. And there's something very intangible about that. With her, there was no backstory. There was no touring. She didn't do any interviews, and that song all around the world connected with everybody, even people that don't speak English, in an even manner. It was #1 in 30 odd countries, right? And so it's not just some weird Australian thing. So what that tells me is, that most of all, write a great song. So if you haven't spent enough time on that, spend more time on that. And once you've written the greatest song ever, then after that, spend your time on, learning to create content. And, you can write a great song and it can just sit in your living room, and it's not going to do anything, obviously. So, you have to take that song to the world. And these days it is all about that stuff of working out how to tell your story, what part of your story you're happy to put on camera, what kind of content creation skills you have in terms of engaging people. How do you inspire people to want to tell other people about your story? For someone like Tash Sultana, she just recorded herself on her own phone playing guitar in her own bedroom, just put her phone on her windowsill and, few weeks later, that had millions of plays, and just after she posted it on Facebook, there was something about that video that spoke to people. It was how great she was as a player, like how she looked, the fact that people hadn't seen that kind of thing before. Who knows? But whatever it was about that content, it was the kind of content where people went, I'm going to share this. I'm excited about it. I want to be a part of it. And so everybody that shared that video became a part of Tasha's bigger picture story of finding her audience. And she ended up signing to a major label, to Sony, and ended up, but she toured England and sold out 3 nights at the Brixton Academy, which is a 5,000 capacity venue. So she sold 15,000 tickets on the other side of the world, even before she put out her debut album. That's all, if you trace that back, that's all back to the video on Facebook. As simple as that. Now, it doesn't mean you can copy that. It's not like everyone who puts a video of themselves playing on Facebook ends up selling out Brixton Academy.
Yeah, put one video up and just wait for the booking to happen.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? But yeah, so every time somebody builds the paradigm that makes it work for them, of course, lots of people will copy, but the point is not that you copy that paradigm. The point is that you make your own. The current version of Tash Sultana's Facebook video seems to be TikTok, people doing these viral dances to songs. So most of the new artists that are getting big in the world currently are getting big because their song is featured on TikTok. And it doesn't have, a lot of those artists don't have a wealth of back catalogue. They don't even sometimes have a lot of information online, but they have one song that suddenly has tens of millions of plays because people like dancing to it on TikTok,
Yeah.
And so, that probably will die really soon and people will find some other way of discovering music, as is always the case. There's always new ways. So you've got to be at the forefront of whatever the next thing will be.
Yeah. Cool. So make great shit and then tell people about it in an interesting way. Make content, put it in the right place. Meet
people where they are. A lot of people, getting big in TikTok, barely even know what TikTok is. That New Zealand singer Benny is one of the big current TikTok acts, and she didn't even know what TikTok was when suddenly people started sending videos of themselves dancing to her song.
Right.
But now that she knows what it is, she's making content for that audience, and which is obviously a very good and reasonable thing to do. But so yeah, you don't have to necessarily come from the world, but you have to watch where people are and you have to meet people where they are. There's no point you just making great creative work in a vacuum because you have to see where people are. Maybe it's through video games. What you just have to watch what people are doing and how they might be finding out about new music. Chances are they're not finding out about music where they used to. There's many kids now that don't listen to Triple J ever. They don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
They know lots of new music, and they might only have ever listened to music through YouTube, And which isn't a good or bad thing. It's just, it is what it is,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can definitely lament whatever system was in place where things were working. And
people tend to get fixated on what they know. They want the world to stop. Hey, like if you love the world where Triple J makes bands famous, then it's meant to just stay that way forever. It's never worked that way. When Countdown made people famous, sure, it made people famous for a couple of years, and then everyone moved on. And so it's always been that way. Like there's always been things that come and go that have waning influence, or that have a moment when they have that sense of power, and then it's one of the things I love about the world. The world gets tired of it and the energy shifts to something else. So you have to keep shifting your energy. You can't become complacent and think that whatever you thought to learn about is going to stay static, because nothing is static, including happiness, including creativity. Everything is always moving. So you have to place your ship on the ocean and then hopefully guide it, rather than just be, rocketed around by the wind.
Yeah. Finding a spot where all the fish are, and then when they go away, like where are all the fish? This is unfair. And you got to keep moving and placing yourself in front of the wave. It's like the surfing metaphor is just in that sweet spot, getting ahead of the curve and being where the people are. Yeah. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing. Like, people tend to be very judgmental about audiences as if they're not smart enough to find them. Audiences find what they need to find, And yeah, if you're making something that's not connecting, doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that for whatever reason, it's just not interesting to the wider world. It's not a mistake that they haven't found it. It's just that they haven't had the opportunity. So you have to look at it as an opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely noticed when I'm more consistently putting stuff out there that I think's a decent quality and in the places where I think people are going to find it, I mean, I just get a better response. It's just, whether it's more views of a video or more streams or more comments, more emails coming back to me or whatever, there's a relationship there. It's like if that stuff's going in the right places, people are going to stumble across it, and if they like it, they're going to respond, I suppose.
It's really interesting to me that like those couple of Australian examples like Tash Sultana and Tones and I, who have become really big from being buskers. That's really interesting because, in the age of the internet and online content, two people that like hone their art being on the street are two of the biggest acts in Australia. And, so that's a combination of knowing the truth of having to take their music to the people, but also honing their art by playing their art so many times to people that just don't give a shit. Right? Like the definition of busking is everyone is walking past you. How the hell do you make them stop? How do you make them stop and watch you for a minute or 2 minutes? And so in an interesting way, that busking thing has, if you'd said to me 10 years ago that two of the most famous acts in Australia would be buskers on the street, I would have went, nah, that age is done. Like, people find music online now. They don't go to the Burke Street Mall to find their favorite new act,
Yeah.
But obviously it is that element of them honing their craft and playing those songs so many times, but fighting to get people's attention, and winning that battle ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Just that human interaction of seeing how people respond to different things that you do. I guess it's just, in that case, so much trial and error of like, I'm going to try this, I'm going to dance around, I'm going to...
Yeah, they're not making their music in a vacuum. They're making it in the laboratory of people.
Yeah, that's right. It's like market research to the max. Like, great. So I want to try and somehow transition us over into talking about some mental health stuff. So when you're talking about creating content, finding an audience, there's lots of confusion around that. There's also lots of anxiety and lots of doing new things, lots of striving, lots of pressure, self-imposed pressure, expectation. There's all this, all this kind of stuff. When I think about creating content, my narrative is, no, I just want to make music. And I'm sure this is, most artists' narrative is, I just want to make music. I don't want to make content. That's not a skill I have to learn. And I've been, going through that process of, learning these skills and whatever. And so there's a lot of doing and striving and trying. And I've been engaging with your other content of Qigong and meditation and this theme of slowing down, which is something, I'm really, am challenged by. I've got some practices that I check in with. I do some yoga, I do some meditation, I do journaling, I do exercise, that sort of stuff. But this strong desire, to make things happen or to strive, I just love. I've really
it's very interesting to me that your takeaway is the slowing down part, because in actual fact, in that school of thought, which essentially is Taoist thought, based on a book called the Tao Te Ching, there's nothing to do with slowing down. So the concept called Wu Wei, WUWEI, it translates as effortless action. So it's not about doing less. It's about being more efficient, being more effortless. So being in the flow. So,
Right.
if you're a great surfer or a great dancer or a great, player, sports person, it's generally because you've done whatever your thing is, you've done it for tens of thousands of hours, right?
Mm.
So everybody hones their craft by doing it so many times, so repetitively and so consistently that in the end they can do it being in the flow.
Right.
So this idea of effortless flow, that's what Wu Wei is. So it's not slowing down. It's doing something to the point where your conscious mind is not controlling it. You're not all the time thinking about how to do it because you know how to do it. Your whole nervous system is just in the moment of doing it. And you do it so effortlessly that you do it better, faster, whatever it is, than anyone else. You become the best dancer, the fastest runner, the best guitar player, whatever it is. So that's that concept of Wu Wei. It's a central element of the Tao Te Ching, which is a Chinese book written 2,500 years ago, which I love. It's a very famous book, second most published book in the world in the history of literature after the Bible, unsurprisingly. And yeah, there's so much wisdom in that book. It's only 5,000 words. But most of the book is about this idea of not doing. But not doing is not slowing down. Not doing is becoming effortless.
All right, cool. It's such an interesting concept because, in our culture, as I was watching some of your stuff, I thought about how, and again, maybe it's a misinterpretation, which is great because we can talk about it, that because we're in such a doing mode often, and it's very future focused, which is not so much present and in the flow. I was thinking about how it's so countercultural in a way. It's almost a very punk idea, is to just be kind of very present and just in what you're doing. And so what I'm hearing, the distinction that I'm hearing is it's more about being deeply engaged with the moment, but maybe not from that conscious analytical perspective.
If you try to think about something, then all you're doing is trying or thinking, right? And what you're trying to get to is the bit just beyond that, where you're not trying and you're not thinking. But the way our mind works, the more we go, oh, what should I be thinking about? I wish I wasn't thinking so much. All you're doing is thinking. So you're making the problem worse. Right. So how do you get to this beautiful point where you're not thinking about thinking? And essentially, to get to that point of effortless action where you are achieving a lot by not doing much, there's only one answer, which is always you have to be still and you have to breathe. And it's through your breath that you gain some control over your nervous system and you become more efficient. It's very simple physiological things. As you become still and as you breathe deeper, your blood pressure drops, your heart rate slows. More blood traveling to your brain means more oxygen, which means you think clearer. You have more oxygen in your brain, you have more clarity. Your immune system switches on, your digestive system switches on, breaks down food, creates energy. So it's, sometimes you have to break down, I'm talking about very complex physiological things very simply, obviously, but all of this can happen through our breath and through stillness. It's when we're busy, when we're always thinking, planning, replaying events, moving forwards, backwards, constantly thinking, I need more of this, I need to do this, I need to do that. That's what makes us inefficient. So instead of trying to find an answer to the inefficiency, again, grasping for intellectual things, I want more, I need more, if only I had this, I would be happy, the I want mind or the I don't want mind. Either way, it's the same thing, right? The only way you get past that is by becoming present. And the gateway to becoming present is through your breath. So the simplest way to get to that idea of effortless action is first by just training your body, training yourself to breathe differently. And that's when your mind will become clearer. Not necessarily slower, but clearer.
Yeah, and therefore more efficient.
therefore more efficient. All those physiological things will happen. You know, if your immune system works, you become less ill. If your digestive system works better, you have more energy to expend. If you send more oxygen to your brain, you will make better decisions, not based on just reacting and responding, but based on considered, thought. And, you won't be fighting as many battles. You won't be spending so much time on creating things that have no effect. So many times the problem is our habits. We do things, why? Because that's how we've always done them.
Yeah.
Not because they're actually making us go forward in a meaningful way. So many of the things that we do, we just do them because that's our habit to do them. And changing these habits is quite hard, and it takes a lot of awareness. And when you need more awareness, again, it just comes back to your breath again. So, that's essentially what Qigong is. It's changing the physiological relationship of your body through your breath and through movement. So you teach your body to move in a more effortless, more efficient way. And then, so many ways in which you're being reactive and responsive, you can change through the awareness that you have from the movement.
Yeah, it's powerful. The way, I mean, I'm as you're speaking, I'm thinking about examples of in my life, whether it's present or where that is present and where it's not present. And when it comes to creativity, it's absolutely key to creativity. I was almost going to say slowing down again, but the clarifying and the removal of future past, it's becoming present. I know when I go to write a song, I calm everything down. I mean, my breathing changes, my posture changes. I go into a state of stillness essentially, and that creates the space for creative ideas to sort of bubble up, rather than, I think of brain waves, like when the mind's really busy, whether it's future focused or wherever it's at, that there's actually no space for creativity to happen in that.
Yeah.
And then when the brain waves are like this, it allows so much space for new things to come, rather than having more input, like you're talking about, whether it's learning new things or reading a new thing or cramming in another podcast. It removes that influx of information to allow the expression to happen.
Yeah, you can't have creativity unless you have created space for it. If you're always busy and distracted and restless, you won't have creativity. So, plenty of people create art when they're busy and distracted and restless, but I wouldn't be convinced that art would be all that special,
Yeah.
So, it's that thing of like finding a space for something new and something important. It's that internal journey of working that out yourself, like whatever emotional thing that you're channeling your creativity into, and then connecting it to the wider world once you've done that. But, one of the ways in which the habits of impacts on musicians and creativity, I see that I have these conversations all the time, and I don't want to mention examples. It's not about casting judgment, because some people are ready and some people are not. But musicians spend so much time and money and energy creating things that are from an aesthetic that is no longer all that relevant. Whether it's, making a full-length album when they don't have a fan base that wants to buy an album, or whether it's, touring to play lots of tiny places when none of those people connect with their music online, or, so most musicians that I know spend the majority of their time doing things that will not create any good energy around their music. And why do they do that? Because maybe they just enjoy driving to Sydney and Adelaide to play gigs, or whatever it is, like there's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong. There's no judgment, right? But if you consider the arc of how do I find a mass audience to be able to make creativity my day job, or whatever their goal might be, all of that time is not necessarily valuable time. So, and I'm not going to tell anyone there's a template of what they should be doing, but it's pretty easy when you analyze what you do to work out all the things that don't have much positive effect. It's very hard to build an audience one punter at the time when you're playing to a whole bunch of random drunk people in various places. So, whenever I talk to creative people about their frustrations with what they do or do not perceive the music industry to be, I generally just try and bring stuff back to their own sense of where they could be spending their time best. Are you fighting battles, or are you building from strength? Are you meeting people where they are rather than where you are? Are you, if you're, people need to have that sense of who are they making their art for? What kind of audience do they want to find? Where are they? What do they look like? A lot of times musicians never think about these questions, just quite simple questions of what, how wide do they want things to be?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's something I never really considered until, just wondering, I don't want to kind of drop too many names or mention, but anyway, I had someone who ended up mentoring me for a little while, an Australian female artist, and that was one of the best things that happened in that process, was just clarifying these things of basically answering the question, what are you actually doing? What are you doing here? Where is this headed? What are you ultimately doing it for? And the other thing that I think you're sort of referencing is the importance of self-knowledge or self-awareness of who are you and what is your music and what is it about, and then figuring out who that audience is that would care about that, and where are they and how do they want to, we kind of reference this, how do they want to engage with that music? Yeah. That self-awareness part is so important. Otherwise, you just fall into the template that has been set out in the past. It's like, well, this is how the industry works. You go on tour and you do this thing, and that's the trajectory. But that doesn't work for everyone. Like, even if it is the way to do it or the predominant way to do it, it may not work for certain people. And they're a studio artist or someone who just wants to work from their bedroom and put links on SoundCloud and email a few people and whatever.
And there's so many examples of that in these days, people that have never played live, have never done interviews, that suddenly have mass popularity. They haven't done anything to search for it or to work towards it. It's just happened. Are these people lucky, or are they just, are they in the right place at the right time? Or is there something about their story that's interesting that, people gravitate towards and then share, right? So that's my take on it, So you don't have to choose fame to find fame. Lots of people become famous that are not at all ready to cope with it in any kind of, emotional, mental way. It's not like you have to sit down and plan for fame or plan for a creative life. You do have to be aware of your own expectations and your own sense of planning and how that might be getting in your way.
Yeah, which sort of, I like the framework of just thinking about the battles that you're fighting, whether they're battles where we're setting up for ourselves, I suppose, and which ones are worth working towards or overcoming, and which ones don't serve us at all.
If you want to frame Qigong framework for battles, it's like there are no battles that you battle. None. Right? It's like every time there's a potential thing that you feel like you have to fight against or push against or whatever, in Qigong or in the Tao, it will be, you will essentially, the only analysis you will do is, thinking about the reaction that you have when you're placed in that situation. And, you only move energy when energy is moving towards you. If you just keep pushing out and nobody is coming to you, then it's all wasted energy. So all the musicians that are just battling to play gigs in front bars of people talking through their set or whatever it is, it's like there's no energy coming towards them. So they just have to slow down and watch and wait until people are coming towards them. And then, and people might be coming towards them for all kinds of random reasons. I can't remember the name, but someone was telling me the other day of some musician that's getting really famous because they're a chef. And as a chef, they just started sharing their music, And I have a friend who's a fashion designer and was also a musician and never mentioned her fashion designer life to her music audience and vice versa. And then just one day switched and then all of a sudden found an audience. She had no idea that people that cared about fashion might also like her folk music, and guess what they did, So it's like there's, you just have to find those opportunities where you can connect things rather than feel like you can make things happen. The idea that your effort is attached to a result is the problem. So you have to you have to act without expectation. You have to act not because you're getting something in return, you just act because you enjoy it or it's what you do, rather than because I need this to happen. If I write this song, Triple J will play it. That doesn't work. It never did. Yet so many musicians keep convincing themselves of these narratives, kind of false narratives. And the problem is always from within. It's not being imposed on anyone else.
Awesome. Yeah. There's something interesting to tease out here is the setting the intention. So I come back to this thing all the time, which is high intention, low attachment. So setting out things that I would love to have in the world, or things I'm interested in doing, or things I'm interested in pursuing. And again, that comes from self-knowledge, understanding kind of who you are and what motivates you and what actually brings you joy and delight. So setting intentions and acting towards them, but maintaining low attachment. Like, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to put this song out. And then that's almost my full responsibility has been acted upon, so I can't force that upon anyone or can't make people resonate with it really. So my job is to create the thing I want to create, maintain low attachment, and continue to create essentially.
You could add one thing to that, which is your job is also to watch what that potential audience might be interested in, so that you're not just creating something in a vacuum, but you're waiting until people come towards you a little bit. So when you see whatever the thing is that people connect with, you go, well, can I do more of that? And, sometimes people feel uncomfortable at that. They feel like that's not a creative thing, but to me, that's almost the most creative thing. It's like, when Billie Eilish got famous, a lot of the way she got famous was for body consciousness issues from teenage girls, right? She wore oversized clothing and was quite openly speaking about not wanting to be sexualized as a 16-year-old female and stuff. So many people responded to that. Now, she didn't get out of bed hoping to be an ambassador for, body shaming or whatever. So that just came because of who she was genuinely as an artist. And that was what made so many people emotionally connect with her. So, I don't think she did anything, from as far as I can tell, to foster that, other than responding in a genuine and honest way once people expressed interest in it. She didn't sit down and go, gee, if I wear these awful looking oversized clothes, maybe I'll get famous.
I'll become an.
She just did it because it was her, right? So it's finding those things, those connections between yourself and your audience, so that you're not just making things in a vacuum. The good thing about the modern world is you don't have to guess. You can see it's visceral. If you put something on YouTube or Spotify or wherever it is, you can look at the numbers and you can A/B test. You can put out song here, song here, song here, and just see what works. Are people on SoundCloud? Are they on YouTube? Are they in Spotify? Are they Shazamming? There's no, find people where they are means you have to put stuff everywhere, in a way that has the sensitivity of you understanding it at least a little bit. But, it's just doing that sort of A/B testing whenever you create something, just to see what connects with people, and that's how you find out where they are. And if they're not on Spotify, then, you know, if you keep just spending all your energy on Spotify, that doesn't make any sense, you know. If you keep being annoyed because Triple J aren't playing your song when all of your fans are 40 years old, that doesn't make any sense because 40-year-olds don't listen to Triple J, you know, whatever the scenario is.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I really like that addition. I think you're right that it's artists, musicians or artists tend to be a little bit allergic to that idea of, oh, they're liking that, so I'll do more of that or whatever. It's perceived as whatever, selling out. But if it's resonating and you're finding an audience, I mean, that's ultimately, for most artists, that's ultimately what they want, you know, really connect with an audience, have their art seen and heard. So, yeah, it's a great addition.
A lot of artists, and the whole framework is what did my heroes do? But the heroes are usually from the 60s or the 70s or the 90s, or from an entirely different paradigm, entirely different age, where technology was different, music was different, like, you know, so basing your creative and artistic decisions on what your heroes did makes no sense whatsoever, because if anything, you should be trying to change the narrative and evolve that sense of storytelling, not hold it back on a paradigm that's gone, you know. So, you know, most of the time when I actually ask, when I say to an artist that has a tiny fan base, why are you making an album? Their only answer is, well, because Radiohead made albums, or, you know, or whatever it is, you know, like it's, like at some point you have to flip and get into that mindset of like, okay, let's think how I'm consuming music, or how my friends are, or how my non-music industry friends are. Are they listening to albums at home? You know, and most of the time the answer will be, fuck no. You know, they just have a Spotify playlist on, or they have whatever, or they're just playing Fortnite, or they're on YouTube, or, you know, so if you really want to know, like, you have to go and watch people and ask them, you know, and not just the 4 friends that come from the same generation as you. You have to get a little bit wider with your, you know, testing. Yeah.
That's why what you mentioned, just testing it everywhere and just seeing what comes back, put the breadcrumbs out and come back tomorrow and see where the ants are. Or
I love the fact that in the modern world you can't have a flop. Like, many very big artists put out songs that no one cares about, but nobody ever says that was a flop song anymore, because no one's investing anything in a set song or a set. So, you know, when an artist puts out a new song, when, say, the Black Keys come back, here's our new song. If it doesn't work, guess what happens? 3 weeks later, here's another new song. And then a month later, here's another new song. And maybe the third one is the one that works, but nobody goes, oh, they put out 2 real duds, you know, like nobody thinks that way anymore. There's just things that are put out there, just released to the world, and either they get traction or they don't. But there's no sense of judgment. There's no sense of failure. So, you know, and when you have traction, it lifts everything up. You know, any artist that gets a little bit famous, all their songs start building, and all of the ones where the timing wasn't right, or they weren't ready, or they whatever, like, people end up finding those songs as well. So that's one of the joys of the modern world to me, that there's all these artists like Lizzo or Doja Cat that can become big after years of hard work, even though they made loads of mistakes and put out albums that nobody bought and, you know, played many shows to no people. It means nothing, because once they connect, then they connect forever. You know, I guarantee you in 10, 20 years, everyone will still know who Lil Nas X is, even though, you know, in the old days he would have been a prime one-hit wonder. His second biggest song on YouTube and Spotify has 500 million plays. Not his hit song, his second biggest, and people still generally think of him as a one-hit wonder, right? So, you know, you essentially can't be a one-hit wonder anymore. As soon as you hit, you know, and people know your name, and people, you know, if your art is good and interesting enough, people will find it.
Yeah, there's a lot in the back catalogue that people can go have access to immediately, just whether it's on Spotify or wherever, and they can just get it.
You know, you can put out 100 songs that no one listens to. If your 101st one works, it's all on, right? So I love that about the modern world. So, people who are stewing about having spent a lot of time and energy on something that doesn't connect, don't worry about it. Just make something next. Make the next song even better, more impactful, and maybe try different things with the next song. But this idea that if one thing doesn't work, it's a judgment on your worth or your career, or, you know, like that's not real and it's not true. And it's in human nature to feel that judgment, but people have to fight against that idea, which is about staying present and just working on the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Beautifully put. I reckon we've covered some good ground here. A lot to think about. There's what I've enjoyed about the conversation is just the moving into the present moment and thinking about things or not thinking about things, but clearly moving into that action and then responding to the feedback and staying true to what you do or who you are. And so there's one quote that I loved at the end of one of your videos, which relates to that, which is the grass seeds know what they were meant for and don't try to be anything else.
Yeah.
I think it's a really, a powerful metaphor for kind of living that self-awareness part of like, I know what I'm here to do. If I'm continuing to express that, I'm not going to be, it removes all the tension in being an artist of comparison or
needing the validation, all that stuff, you know.
Yeah, it's just...
The one I like that's a little bit like that is in the autumn, trees don't feel sad when they lose their leaves.
Yeah.
That's another old Chinese proverb, which is, you know, just trust in the cycles, you know.
Yeah.
Trust that when you lose something or when something has gone bad, you don't have to feel that sense of sadness or pity or what did I do wrong? Why did my leaves fall off my tree, right? You just
or
wait.
Self-judgment.
And then the season changes, the timing changes, and then the leaves come back, right? So trust in the cycles of the world. Trust that if you focus on good and simple and have patience, that things will come around. So, you know, when you start talking about grass and trees and all that, it's like some people get a bit lost because they're still in that mind thing of like, I've got to figure this out, this music industry. If I finally figure it out, then I'll make it, and all my hard work will have been worth it, you know.
Yeah.
And it's all very silly because it's that same energy just swirling around in your head, and it's not going anywhere. So, you know, if you just do like what the grass does, do like what the tree does. Just if you're meant to make music and you keep making it and surrounding yourself with good energy, connecting with good people, finding where your audience are. All of, you know, that's the way forward in terms of just not just making great music, but having a good life, feeling content, feeling happiness. You know?
Yeah, I think that's really the ultimate progress or whatever is just living more and more in alignment with that true nature of who you are, and having more acceptance of that. In the creativity workshops that I run, I was using this metaphor a lot of a tree. A tree is not trying to be anything else but a tree. And it doesn't look at another tree and go, man, check out the branches on that tree. Yeah. Whatever. It's just it's in pure alignment with its true nature. And that's why it works. It plays its role that it's supposed to play in the ecosystem. And then I suppose what we're talking about is just about trusting that you know, you're here to play a particular role that, you know, by tapping into your true alignment, you can do that. And the more you get in alignment, the more fulfilling it is and the more likely it is to work.
Because it has the good energy. And when you have the good energy, that's what the world gravitates towards. They don't gravitate towards the bad energy, the people fighting and responding and striving. People don't gravitate towards that. They gravitate towards the good energy.
True. Speaking of good energy, would you like to direct people anywhere to get some good energy from the things that you're working on and placing in the world?
Not really. I have nothing to sell, really. But if anyone wants to do daily yoga and qigong, I'm going to keep doing that for a while. I guess just track me down on Facebook or whatever, and you can find the links.
Yeah. I'll direct.
Yeah, and I put a few videos on YouTube, as you've seen.
Yeah.
They're very amateurish, but I'm slowly nutting it out.
Yeah. I love them. I mean, it's a good example of even, the videos you're putting out, they're very uniquely you, I suppose. They're an expression that there's humor in them. There's, they're interesting to watch. They're different to any other Qigong video I'm expecting to come across, So,
Okay.
So, yeah. So, that's
good.
I recommend people go check it out. Sure. I'll direct them.
Qigong is really interesting because it's thousands of years old, but it got banned in China last century after the Communist Revolution. So for a long time, it was, even though millions of people were doing it, it was illegal. The government banned it. So it's only just made a comeback in the last couple of decades. So yeah, I'm quite fascinated by it. But, a lot of people don't know what Qigong is, or they think it's just Tai Chi. But Tai Chi is a form of Qigong. Right. So, but the main thing I always tell people, and when people decide what they do or don't need, I need to go to the gym, I need to do yoga, I need this or that in my life. I always say to them, like, the main thing that you need is just to breathe less often. Mm. See if you can do that tomorrow, and then come back to me. And most of the time, when people become conscious of their breath, they're breathing a lot. So in a given day, we should only be breathing like 10 to 12,000 times over a day, but we actually usually breathe about 25,000. Right? So in a given minute, most of the time people breathe around 15 times per minute. We should only breathe 7 to 8. So imagine if every human on this planet ate twice as much food as what they needed to. Yeah. What would we all look like? I mean, like people in America.
Yeah, like what a lot of people look like.
Yeah, right? So if we all ate twice as much, what would happen? But we all breathe twice as much, right? And yet we think there's no consequences. And to me, the consequences of all this breathing, all this thinking, is that we're just always distracted. We're always busy. We're always like, what's going on my phone? What emails do I have to respond to? We're all the time grasping, thinking that we can make things happen. All we really need to do is just come back into our breath. And it sounds so simple that most people just go, oh, that's nothing. I can do that. I know how to breathe.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm every day trying to learn how to breathe, and I'm not there, Yeah. But sometimes occasionally I can feel it when I'm just like, I'm breathing slowly right now. Holy shit, so that's the thing I normally tell people, just to see if they can knock that out and see if that leads them back to Qigong, because it's so simple and yet it's so hard to grasp. It sounds so simple just to breathe slower and deeper, but we just don't, because we're always stimulating ourselves. We're always in front of the TV. We're always looking at our phones, and that's modern life. And we need to kind of turn the clock back so we're not always stimulating ourselves. So whether you call it meditation or stillness or silence, or you can give it any label if you want, but essentially it's just about breathing slower. So if anyone wants to try, free advice, just breathe slower.
Just breathe 7 times in the next minute and see how you feel.
Yeah, 7 times in a minute. Just see what it feels like. Just see what happens to your body. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. Even as you're talking about it, I'm taking a couple of slower breaths, and there's an instant effect, even through one breath. It doesn't take long to
we all know this. Even when we're babies, people say, take a deep breath. You're really stressed out. People tell us this our whole life, and we never hear it. Like, we just don't hear it. It's like, what do you mean take a deep breath? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, we take it for granted, for sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for the conversation. It's been great. And I'll be catching you around. I'll check out more of your stuff.
Cool. All right, so enjoyed it. Have a great day. You too.
So hopefully after that conversation, you've taken a couple of nice, slow, deep breaths and you're feeling pretty chilled out. I definitely have. So thanks again to Richard. If you want to get in touch with Richard, there will be some contact details below. If he's still doing, these Qigong kind of lessons that you can join in on, you can go and find that there. If you like this episode, please feel free to like it, share it on your own social media with your own insights as to what you found interesting here. Leave a comment below if you're watching this on my blog or on YouTube, wherever you're watching this. And I really appreciate it. That all helps to get the word out and let the ripples just kind of flow out to other people. So thank you very much. If you'd like to get a free download of some of my music, you can head to mijobiscan.com/free music. If you'd like to get a signed limited edition CD sent to you anywhere in the world, you can go to mijobiscan.com/GMCD. That comes with an instant digital download and album artwork and the original booklet and all that stuff. So please feel free to check that out. Thanks again for listening. Look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Golden Moment podcast. Catch you soon. Bye for now.